The sound of breaking glass shattered the peaceful morning silence at Harmony Diner, followed by the heartbreaking wails of an 8-year-old girl who had just reached her breaking point. Brent Thomas sat frozen in his usual corner booth, his dark eyes watching helplessly as his daughter Grace melted down in front of a room full of strangers. The pancakes she'd been trying to eat were now scattered across the checkered floor, syrup pooling beneath the overturned plate. Grace's small hands covered her ears, her body rocking back and forth as she sobbed with the raw pain that only a child with autism could express when the world became too overwhelming. "Grace, sweetheart, please," Brent whispered, his voice barely audible over her cries. He reached toward her, but she flinched away from his touch, lost in her own world of sensory overload. The fluorescent lights were too bright, the chatter of other diners too loud, the texture of the pancakes too strange against her tongue. Everything was wrong, and she couldn't make it stop. Around them, the other customers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some stared openly, others whispered behind their hands, and a few gathered their belongings to leave. Brent felt the familiar burn of shame and helplessness wash over him. This was why they rarely went out anymore. This was why his world had shrunk to the size of their mansion, where Grace felt safe, and he felt like a failure as a father. The waitstaff huddled near the kitchen, uncertain and afraid. All except one. Christine Ringwall had been watching from behind the counter, her heart breaking for the little girl and the man who looked like he was drowning in his own desperation. While her co-workers whispered about calling security or asking them to leave, Christine saw something different. She saw a father who loved his daughter more than life itself, and a beautiful child who was simply overwhelmed by a world that wasn't built for her needs. Without hesitation, Christine approached their table, her movements slow and deliberate. She had worked with special needs children before during her nursing training, and she recognized the signs of sensory overload immediately. Grace needed calm, not chaos. She needed understanding, not judgment. "Hello there, beautiful girl," Christine said softly, her voice like honey over warm bread. She didn't try to touch Grace or get too close. Instead, she knelt beside the booth at Grace's eye level, her presence gentle and non-threatening. "My name is Christine, and I think you're having a really hard time right now." Grace's sobs began to quiet slightly, though her hands remained pressed firmly over her ears. Christine began to hum softly, a lullaby her own mother had sung to her years ago. The melody was simple and soothing, rising and falling like ocean waves. Brent stared in amazement as his daughter's body gradually stopped rocking. Grace's eyes, usually so distant during these episodes, began to focus on Christine's face. There was something about this woman, something peaceful and safe that seemed to reach through Grace's panic. "That's it, sweetheart," Christine continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just listen to the music. There's no hurry, no pressure. You take all the time you need." Slowly, carefully, Christine reached into her apron and pulled out a small cloth napkin. With movements as gentle as butterfly wings, she began cleaning up the spilled syrup around Grace's feet, never once making the child feel ashamed or wrong for what had happened. "You know what?" Christine said conversationally, as if they were old friends having a chat. "I dropped my breakfast this morning too, made a terrible mess all over my kitchen floor. Sometimes our hands just don't want to cooperate, do they?" Grace's hands slowly lowered from her ears. She watched Christine with wide, curious eyes, as if seeing an angel for the first time. "Would you like to try something different?" Christine asked, gently. "I have some crackers in the kitchen. They're plain and simple, and they make a nice, quiet crunch. Sometimes when the world feels too loud, quiet foods help." Grace nodded almost imperceptibly, and Christine's heart soared. She disappeared for a moment, returning with a small plate of saltine crackers and a cup of cool water. She set them on the table within Grace's reach, but didn't push. "There's no rush," Christine said, resuming her gentle humming. "Eat what feels good, leave what doesn't. You're perfect, just the way you are." As Grace tentatively reached for a cracker, Christine's eyes met Brent's across the table. In that moment, something fundamental shifted in Brent's chest. This woman, this beautiful, compassionate stranger, had done in 5 minutes what doctors and therapists had been trying to achieve for years. She had reached his daughter. But it was more than that. As Brent looked into Christine's warm brown eyes, he felt something he thought had died with his wife 4 years ago. His heart, frozen solid since that terrible day in the hospital, began to thaw. Not just for Grace, but for the woman who had shown them both such extraordinary kindness. "Thank you," Grace whispered suddenly, her voice small but clear. It was the first time she had spoken to a stranger in months. "Thank you, pretty lady." Christine's eyes filled with tears, but her smile was radiant. "Thank you, beautiful girl, for letting me be your friend." Brent felt his own eyes burning with unshed tears. He watched as Christine spent the next 20 minutes patiently helping Grace eat her crackers, never rushing, never pushing, simply being present with a love so pure it took his breath away. When they finally prepared to leave, Grace surprised everyone by reaching out and gently touching Christine's hand. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked softly. "I'll be here," Christine promised, her voice thick with emotion. "I work here every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday." As they walked to the car, Grace slipped her small hand into Brent's large one. "Daddy," she said quietly, "I like the pretty lady." She made the scary feelings go away. Brent squeezed his daughter's hand gently, his heart still reeling from what he had witnessed. "I like her too, sweetheart, I like her too." That night, after Grace was safely tucked into bed, Brent sat in his study staring out at the city lights. For the first time in 4 years, he felt something other than grief and exhaustion. He felt hope. He felt the stirring of something he thought was gone forever. He thought about Christine's gentle hands cleaning up the mess without judgment. He thought about her soft voice singing away his daughter's fears. He thought about the way she had looked at Grace, not with pity or discomfort, but with genuine love and acceptance. And for the first time since his wife's death, Brent Thomas allowed himself to wonder if it was possible to love again, if it was possible for his broken family to heal, if it was possible that an angel had walked into their lives disguised as a waitress in a small diner. As he prepared for bed, Brent made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow was Thursday, and tomorrow he would return to Harmony Diner, not just for Grace, but for the woman who had shown them both that miracles still existed. The woman who had made his daughter speak to a stranger. The woman who had made his frozen heart begin to beat again. The woman who, though he didn't know it yet, would become his everything. Tuesday couldn't come soon enough. For the first time in 4 years, Brent Thomas had something to look forward to, something to hope for, something to live for, beyond just surviving each day. Christine Ringwall had walked into their lives for what seemed like a moment, but Brent knew with absolute certainty that she had changed them forever. Whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same. And for the first time since Sarah's death, that thought didn't terrify him. It filled him with hope. Chapter 2. Hearts Begin to Heal. 3 months had passed since that first magical day at Harmony Diner, and Christine Ringwall had become as essential to the Thomas family's routine as morning coffee and bedtime stories. "Is today a Christine day?" Grace asked every morning, though she knew the schedule by heart. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday mornings at the diner, followed by afternoon activities that had gradually expanded from quick visits to entire afternoons spent together. "Every day is a Christine day in my heart," Brent found himself thinking, though he'd never spoken those words aloud. Not yet. The transformation in Grace over these 3 months had been nothing short of miraculous. The little girl who once couldn't make eye contact with strangers now waved enthusiastically at other diners, asked the hostess about her day, and had even started a friendship with Tommy, a boy with Down syndrome whose family frequented the same diner. "Good morning, beautiful girl," Christine said warmly as the Thomas family settled into their usual booth. The greeting had become ritual, but it never failed to make Grace beam with joy. "Good morning, Christine," Grace replied clearly, her speech having improved dramatically with Christine's patient encouragement. "I brought you something." She pulled a carefully folded piece of paper from her pocket, a drawing of 3 figures holding hands under a rainbow. The tallest figure had dark hair like her father, the smallest had Grace's distinctive curls, and the middle figure had warm brown skin and a smile that radiated kindness. "This is us," Grace explained seriously. "You, me, and Daddy. We're a family in my picture." Brent's breath caught in his throat. In all his careful planning, all his corporate strategizing, he'd never found words for what Christine had become to them. But Grace, with her beautiful clarity, had captured it perfectly. "It's the most wonderful picture I've ever seen," Christine said, her voice thick with emotion. "May I keep it forever?" "Forever and always," Grace said solemnly, using the phrase Christine often used when promising to be there for her. As Grace became absorbed in her coloring book, Brent and Christine fell into the easy conversation that had developed over their months of friendship. They talked about everything: Grace's progress in school, Christine's challenging cases at the hospital, Brent's struggles with work-life balance, Christine's pride in Michael's academic achievements. "I have something to tell you," Christine said quietly, glancing at Grace to make sure she was distracted. "I got offered a position at Children's Hospital, head of pediatric nursing." Brent felt his heart skip. "Christine, that's incredible. It's everything you've worked for." "It is," she agreed, but her smile seemed forced. "The thing is, it would mean leaving the diner. No more Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday mornings, no more." She gestured helplessly at their corner booth, at Grace humming contentedly, at the life they'd built in this small space. "No more us," Brent finished quietly. The weight of those words settled between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. "I haven't said yes yet," Christine continued. "I wanted to talk to you first. To Grace. This routine we have, these mornings, they matter to me. You both matter to me." Before Brent could respond, Grace looked up from her coloring. "Christine, are you sad? Your voice sounds like when I feel worried." Christine knelt beside Grace's chair, taking the little girl's hands in hers. "I got offered a new job, sweetheart. A really important one, helping sick children at the hospital." Grace's eyes widened. "That's good, right?" "You love helping children." "I do love helping children," Christine agreed. "But taking this job might mean I can't come to the diner as much. I might not see you and your daddy every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday." Grace was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the seriousness she brought to all important matters. "Will you still be my angel friend?" she asked finally. "Always," Christine promised. "No matter what job I have, no matter where I work, I will always be your angel friend." "Then you should take the important job," Grace said with startling maturity, "because more children need angel friends, and you're the best one in the whole world." Brent stared at his daughter in amazement. When had she become so wise? "But," Grace continued, holding up one finger in a gesture she'd learned from her father, "you have to promise to still do fun things with us, like going to the park and helping me with puzzles and teaching Daddy how to braid hair properly." Christine laughed through her tears. "I promise, sweetheart. Nothing could keep me away from you and your daddy." As Grace returned to her coloring, Brent reached across the table and took Christine's hand. The simple touch sent electricity through both of them, a reminder of the attraction that simmered just beneath their careful friendship. "Take the job," he said quietly. "Grace is right. More children need you. But she's also right about the other part. We're not losing you, Christine. We're just evolving." "Evolving?" Christine asked, her pulse quickening at the way he was looking at her. "These 3 months," Brent said, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm, "have been the best of my life since Sarah died. Watching Grace bloom, seeing her confidence grow, knowing that someone cares about her as much as I do. It's been a gift." He paused, searching for the right words. "But it's been more than that. You've become essential to both of us, Christine. Not just as Grace's friend, but as—" He struggled with the words, afraid to say too much, afraid to say too little. "As what?" Christine whispered. "As the woman who made me remember what it feels like to hope for the future," Brent admitted. "As the person I think about first thing in the morning and last thing at night. As someone I can't imagine living without." Christine's eyes filled with tears. "Brent, I know it's complicated," he continued quickly. "I know I have baggage and responsibilities and a daughter who has to come first. I know you have your own dreams and goals and a brother counting on you, but I also know that what we have here is special. What we've built together is worth fighting for." "What are we fighting for, exactly?" Christine asked, though her heart already knew the answer. "A chance," Brent said simply. "A chance to see if this feeling between us is as real as it seems. A chance to build something beautiful together. A chance to be the family that Grace drew in her picture." Christine looked down at the drawing still clutched in her free hand. 3 figures holding hands under a rainbow, a child's vision of perfect love. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I've never felt this way about anyone before. I've never wanted something so much that the thought of losing it terrifies me." "I'm scared too," Brent confessed. "Terrified, actually. Loving someone means risking losing them, and I've already lost so much. But Christine, the alternative, going back to the way things were before you came into our lives, that's not living. That's just existing." Grace suddenly looked up from her coloring book, as if sensing the weight of the conversation happening around her. "Are you going to be my daddy's girlfriend now?" she asked Christine with characteristic directness. Both adults froze, then burst into surprised laughter. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" Christine managed. "Because you're holding hands and looking at each other the way people do in movies when they're about to kiss," Grace said matter-of-factly. "Also, Mrs. Patterson says that when grown-ups care about each other very much, sometimes they become boyfriend and girlfriend, and then maybe they get married and have babies." Brent choked on his coffee. "Grace." "What? It's true, isn't it?" Grace looked between them with innocent curiosity. "I wouldn't mind if Christine was your girlfriend. I think she'd be a very good one." Christine squeezed Brent's hand, drawing strength from his warmth and the love she saw in his eyes. "Yes," she said quietly, looking first at Grace, then at Brent. "I think I'd like to try being your daddy's girlfriend, if that's okay with you." Grace clapped her hands in delight. "Does this mean you'll come to dinner at our house and help me pick out clothes and maybe read bedtime stories sometimes?" "If your daddy wants me to," Christine said, her heart racing as she met Brent's gaze. "I want you to," Brent said simply. "I want all of that and more. I want to take you on real dates and bring you flowers and meet your brother properly and introduce you to everyone who matters to me. And I want to cook dinner for you and Grace and help with homework and be part of your daily life instead of just these scheduled visits," Christine replied. "So it's decided?" Grace asked, bouncing slightly in her seat. Christine is your girlfriend now." Brent brought Christine's hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her palm. "If she'll have me." "I'll have you," Christine whispered, her heart full to overflowing. As they prepared to leave the diner that morning, Grace skipping ahead while her father paid the bill, Christine felt a profound shift in her world. 3 months ago, she'd been a lonely woman working 2 jobs, focused solely on supporting her brother's dreams. Now she was part of something bigger, a family that chose each other, loved each other, and faced the future together. The head nursing position could wait another day. Today was about celebrating this new chapter, about planning their first official date, about figuring out how to blend their lives in a way that honored both their independence and their growing love. "Christine," Brent said as they reached the parking lot, "thank you." "For what?" "For saving us," he said simply, "for taking a chance on a broken family and helping us become whole again." Christine rose on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek softly. "Thank you for letting me." As they drove away in separate cars, Christine to the hospital, Brent and Grace home to plan what Grace was already calling the best dinner party ever, all 3 of them knew that everything had changed. They were no longer just friends sharing meals at a diner. They were a family in the making, bound by love, hope, and the beautiful promise of all the tomorrows they would share together. 3 months had been just the beginning. Now the real adventure could start. Chapter 3. Unexpected Connections. 4 months into their growing relationship, the storm that rolled into the city that Saturday evening was fierce and unexpected, with lightning that split the sky like silver veins and thunder that shook the windows of Harmony Diner. Christine glanced at the clock as the last customer hurried out into the downpour. It was nearly 9 p.m., well past closing time, but the storm had trapped her at the diner. Her car was in the shop, and she'd planned to take the bus home, but no buses were running in this weather. She was alone in the empty restaurant, cleaning tables and thinking about how much her life had changed since meeting the Thomas family. What had started as simple kindness toward a struggling child had blossomed into the most meaningful relationship of her adult life. Brent and Grace had become fixtures in her routine over the past 4 months. Their Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday visits had evolved beyond meals into genuine friendship. Grace had grown more confident and talkative, and Brent had begun to smile with his whole face instead of just his mouth. "Christine, are you all right?" Brent's voice cut through her thoughts as he stood in the doorway, soaked to the skin, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. "Brent!" She rushed toward him with a towel from behind the counter. "What are you doing out in this weather? Where's Grace?" "She's safe at home with Mrs. Patterson, our housekeeper," he said, accepting the towel gratefully. "I was driving back from a client dinner when I saw your car wasn't in the parking lot, but the lights were still on. I was worried about you." Christine's heart fluttered. He'd been worried about her. "My car's in the shop. I was planning to take the bus, but no buses are running in this storm," Brent finished, concern evident in his voice. "Christine, you can't stay here all night. Let me drive you home." She hesitated. Over the past 4 months, they'd carefully maintained the boundaries of friendship, despite the electricity that sparked between them every time their hands accidentally touched, every time their eyes met across Grace's head during story time. "I don't want to be any trouble." "You could never be trouble," Brent said softly, and the sincerity in his voice made her pulse quicken. "Please, let me take care of you the way you've taken care of Grace, the way you've taken care of both of us." The drive to Christine's apartment building took them through quiet streets slick with rain. The storm had knocked out several traffic lights, making their journey feel intimate and otherworldly, as if they were the only 2 people left in the city. "You live here?" Brent asked as they pulled up to the modest building. It wasn't run down, but it was clearly a world away from the luxury he was accustomed to. It's not much, Christine said, suddenly self-conscious about the peeling paint on the building's facade, the small windows, the lack of a doorman. It's perfect, Brent said, and somehow she knew he meant it. It looks like home. As they sat in his expensive car, rain drumming on the roof like a gentle lullaby, Christine found herself really looking at him for the first time. He was handsome, certainly, but it was more than that. There was a gentleness in his eyes, a vulnerability that his business suits couldn't hide. "Would you like to come up for coffee?" she heard herself asking. "It's the least I can do after you rescued me from the storm." Brent's breath caught. He should say no. He should maintain the careful distance they'd established. But the thought of leaving her, of returning to his empty mansion while she went upstairs alone, was unbearable. "I'd like that very much," he said quietly. Christine's apartment was small but warm, filled with photographs of her and Michael, books on pediatric nursing, and plants that somehow thrived despite the limited sunlight. It was nothing like Brent's cold, expensive mansion, and it was the most beautiful place he'd ever seen. "This is lovely," he said, picking up a framed photo of Christine and a young man who could only be Michael. They both had the same warm brown eyes, the same gentle smile. "Is this your brother?" "That's Michael," Christine said proudly as she put on a pot of coffee. "That was taken at his college graduation. He's in his final year of medical school now." "He looks like he adores you," Brent observed, seeing the way Michael was looking at his sister in the photo with obvious love and gratitude. "We only had each other for so long," Christine said softly, settling beside him on her small couch. "After our parents died, I was 19 and he was 14. Everyone said we should be separated, that I was too young to raise a teenager. But I couldn't let that happen. He's not just my brother, he's my heart." Brent set the photo down carefully. "What happened to your parents?" Christine's hands stilled as she prepared the coffee. "Car accident. Black ice on a winter night. They were coming home from their anniversary dinner." Her voice was steady, but Brent could hear the old pain underneath. "One moment we were a family planning Christmas, and the next—" "I'm sorry," Brent said, and the understanding in his voice made Christine look up. "I know what it's like to lose someone you can't imagine living without." "Your wife," Christine said gently. It wasn't a question. Brent nodded, sinking into her couch. "Cancer. It was fast. 3 months from diagnosis to—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Grace was only 4. She barely remembers her mother, and sometimes I think that's a blessing, but sometimes I think it's the cruelest thing of all." Christine brought him coffee and sat beside him, close enough that he could smell her soft perfume, feel the warmth of her presence. "Tell me about her," she said simply. For the next 2 hours, as the storm raged outside, they talked in a way Brent hadn't talked to anyone since Sarah died. He told Christine about his wife's laugh, her terrible cooking, the way she used to sing Grace to sleep with made-up songs about princesses and dragons. "She sounds wonderful," Christine said softly. "Grace is lucky to have had her, even for such a short time." "She would have loved you," Brent said suddenly, then looked surprised by his own words. "I mean, she would have loved how you are with Grace, how patient you are, how you see her potential instead of her limitations." Christine's cheeks flushed. "I just see Grace. She's extraordinary." "She is, but so are you." Brent's voice grew thick with emotion. "The way you've helped her, the way you've helped both of us. How do you do it? How do you make everyone around you feel so valued and loved?" "I don't do anything special," Christine protested. "You just love without conditions," Brent interrupted. "You give without expecting anything in return. You make people feel like they matter." Their eyes met across the small space between them, and suddenly the air was charged with more than just the storm outside. "Brent," Christine whispered, What are we doing? I don't know, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. I just know that sitting here with you feels more right than anything has in 4 years. I know that when I thought about you stranded in that storm, it terrified me. I know that Grace asks about you every morning and talks about you every night. And I know, Christine said softly, that I think about you both constantly. That I've started measuring my days by whether I'll see you. That I've never felt this way about anyone before. They were leaning closer now, drawn together by an invisible force neither could resist. Christine, Brent said, his hand coming up to cup her face gently, I think I'm falling in love with you. I think I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. They almost kissed then, almost crossed the line that would change everything. But at the last second, both pulled back, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were feeling. I should go, Brent said reluctantly, though every fiber of his being wanted to stay. You should, Christine agreed, though she made no move to stand up. They sat there for another moment, hands touching, foreheads almost touching, breathing the same air. Grace is going to ask me tomorrow if I had a good time tonight, Brent said with a slight smile. What will you tell her? The truth. That I had the most perfect evening I've had in years. Even though we just talked? Especially because we just talked. Brent stood slowly, reluctantly. Christine, I want you to know, whatever this is between us, however it develops, it's not about convenience. It's not about finding someone to help with Grace. This is about you, about how you make me feel like I'm coming back to life. Christine walked him to the door, both of them moving slowly, reluctant for the evening to end. Will I see you Tuesday? She asked. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, Brent confirmed with a smile. We wouldn't dream of missing our Christine days. After he left, Christine stood at her window watching his car disappear into the storm. Something fundamental had shifted tonight. They'd crossed an invisible line, acknowledged feelings that had been building for months. When her phone buzzed with a text, she smiled before even reading it. Thank you for tonight, for the coffee, the conversation, and for being you. Sleep well. B. She typed back. Thank you for rescuing me from the storm. Sweet dreams. What she didn't type, but what her heart knew with absolute certainty, was that Brent Thomas hadn't just rescued her from the storm outside. He'd rescued her from the loneliness she'd carried for so long, from the fear that she'd never find someone who could love both her strength and her vulnerability. As she prepared for bed, Christine knew that everything was about to change. They were falling in love, had been falling for months, and there was no going back. Tomorrow, they would have to figure out what came next. Tomorrow they would have to decide if they were brave enough to risk their hearts for something extraordinary. But tonight, she was content to fall asleep with the memory of Brent's gentle voice, his understanding eyes, and the promise of all the tomorrows that might be waiting for them. Chapter 4. The First Kiss. 6 months after that stormy night that had brought them together in Christine's apartment, Brent stood in front of his bedroom mirror, adjusting his tie with nervous hands and preparing for what felt like the most important day of his life. Daddy, you look very handsome, Grace said from her perch on his bed, where she was carefully arranging her own outfit for their special outing. Christine will think you're the most beautiful daddy in the world. Brent chuckled despite his nerves. Thank you, sweetheart. And you look absolutely stunning. It was true. Grace was wearing her favorite purple dress with silver sparkles, and her hair was pulled back with the butterfly clips Christine had given her weeks ago. The past 2 months since the storm had been a careful dance of growing intimacy. They'd had several dinner dates at family-friendly restaurants, afternoon walks in the park where Grace could run and play, and quiet evenings at Brent's house where Christine would help with homework and bedtime stories. But they hadn't kissed. They'd held hands, shared lingering looks, and stayed up late talking after Grace went to sleep. But Brent had been too terrified to take that final step. What if he was misreading the signals? What if she was just being kind? What if he ruined the best thing that had happened to his family in years? "Is Christine going to be my new mommy?" Grace asked suddenly, with the startling directness that always caught Brent off guard. "Would you like that?" Brent asked carefully, sitting beside his daughter on the bed. Grace nodded seriously. "She makes the scared feelings go away. And she makes you smile with your eyes again, not just your mouth. And she knows how to make the best grilled cheese sandwiches in the universe." Out of the mouths of babes, Brent thought. His 8-year-old daughter saw things more clearly than he did sometimes. Today was special. The Children's Museum was hosting a sensory-friendly event for children with autism and other special needs, and Brent had finally worked up the courage to ask Christine to join them. Not as Grace's helper, not as their friend from the diner, but as his girlfriend. The word felt both thrilling and terrifying. When they picked up Christine from her apartment, Brent's breath caught in his throat. She was wearing a soft blue sundress that brought out her eyes, and her hair was loose around her shoulders in gentle waves. She looked beautiful, but more than that, she looked happy. "You two look amazing," Christine said, hugging Grace gently and giving Brent a smile that made his heart race. "I'm so excited for today." "Are you excited because you get to see the dolphin exhibit?" Grace asked seriously. "I'm excited because I get to spend the whole day with my two favorite people," Christine replied, and Grace beamed with joy. The Children's Museum had been transformed for the special event. The lighting was softer, the crowds were smaller, and there were quiet spaces available for children who needed breaks from stimulation. It was perfect for Grace, who had been anxious about the outing despite her excitement. "Look, Daddy! Look! Christine!" Grace called out from an exhibit about ocean life. "It's dolphins, just like the ones you taught me to draw." Brent watched as Christine knelt beside Grace, both of them mesmerized by the gentle movement of the robotic dolphins swimming through their artificial habitat. The sight of them together, his daughter and this incredible woman who had changed their lives, filled him with such overwhelming love that he had to lean against the wall for support. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" Christine said softly to Grace. "See how they move together. That's what families do. They swim through life together, helping each other." "Are we a family?" Grace asked, looking between Christine and her father with hopeful eyes. Christine's gaze met Brent's across the exhibit. "What do you think?" she asked Grace gently. "I think we are," Grace said with the confidence that only children possess. "I think we've been a family since the day you made the scary feelings go away at the diner." As they moved through the museum, Brent watched in amazement as Christine interacted with not just Grace, but all the children at the event. She knelt to their level, spoke in gentle tones, and somehow knew exactly how to approach each child based on their individual needs. When a little boy with Down syndrome had trouble with a puzzle, Christine sat with him patiently until he figured it out himself, then celebrated his success as if he'd just discovered the cure for cancer. "You're incredible with them," Brent said during a quiet moment while Grace was absorbed in a hands-on music exhibit. "They're incredible with me," Christine replied, watching Grace create beautiful harmonies with color-coded bells. "Children see the world so purely. They love without conditions, trust without hesitation. We could all learn from them." "Grace loves you," Brent said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never seen her connect with anyone the way she connects with you." "I love her too," Christine replied, tears glistening in her eyes. "She's changed my life, Brent. You both have. I never knew I could feel this happy, this complete." As the afternoon wore on, Grace experienced something miraculous. Standing in front of an interactive storytelling exhibit, she suddenly began speaking in full sentences to a group of other children, not just one or two words, but actual conversation about her favorite stories and characters. "Once upon a time," Grace said clearly, her voice carrying across the small amphitheater, "there was a little girl who was scared of everything. But then she met an angel who taught her that being different was just another way of being special. And the angel became part of her family, and they all lived happily ever after." Brent felt tears streaming down his face as he watched his daughter, his quiet, withdrawn daughter, captivating an audience of her peers. Beside him, Christine was crying too, her hand pressed to her mouth in amazement. "She's telling our story," Christine whispered. "She's telling the story of how we met." After Grace finished her impromptu tale to enthusiastic applause from children and parents alike, she ran to them with the biggest smile Brent had ever seen on her face. "Did you hear me, Daddy? Did you hear me talk to all those kids?" Grace practically vibrated with excitement. "I heard every word, sweetheart," Brent said, sweeping her into a hug. "I am so proud of you. You were brave and beautiful and amazing." "Christine helped me find my brave voice," Grace said, turning to hug Christine tightly. "She helped me remember that my words matter." As the sun began to set, they found themselves in the museum's rooftop garden. Grace was exhausted from the day's excitement and had fallen asleep on a bench between them, her head resting on Christine's lap while her legs stretched across Brent's. "This is perfect," Christine said softly, her fingers gently stroking Grace's hair. "This whole day has been perfect." "More than perfect," Brent agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "Christine, what Grace did today, the way she spoke to those other children, that was a breakthrough months of therapy haven't achieved, and it happened because of you, because of the love and confidence you've given her." "She already had that inside her," Christine protested. "I just helped her remember." "You did more than that," Brent said, his eyes never leaving her face. "You saved us both, Christine. Before you came into our lives, we were just existing, going through the motions. But you taught us how to live again, how to hope again." Christine's breath caught as she saw the intensity in his dark eyes. "Brent, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice barely above a whisper so as not to wake Grace. "I need you to know that what I feel for you isn't just gratitude. It isn't just because you're wonderful with Grace, though you are. It's because when I look at you, I see everything I didn't know I was missing." He reached over Grace's sleeping form to gently touch Christine's face. "You're kind and strong and beautiful inside and out. You make me want to be better. You make me believe in happy endings again." "You don't have to say that," Christine said softly, her cheeks flushing pink in the golden light of the setting sun. "Yes, I do," Brent replied, "because I'm falling in love with you, Christine Ringwall. I've been falling since that first day in the diner, and I can't stop. I don't want to stop." Christine's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "I love your gentle heart, your devotion to Grace, the way you make me feel like I'm enough just as I am. I love how you see the best in everyone, even when you can't see it in yourself." They sat there in the fading light, their hands touching across Grace's small body, their hearts finally speaking the truth they'd both been carrying for months. "Can I kiss you?" Brent asked softly, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her cheek. "I thought you'd never ask," Christine whispered. He leaned across their sleeping daughter, careful not to disturb her, and pressed his lips to Christine's. It was soft and gentle at first, a question asked and answered. But as Christine responded, her free hand coming up to cup his face, the kiss deepened with all the emotion they'd been holding back. It was a kiss full of promise, of healing, of two broken hearts learning to beat as one. It tasted like hope and felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, their foreheads resting together. "Wow," Christine whispered. "Wow," Brent agreed, then chuckled softly. "I've been wanting to do that for months." "Only months?" Christine teased. "I've been wanting you to do that since the day you looked at me like I'd just performed a miracle in the diner." "You did perform a miracle," Brent said seriously. "You saved my daughter, and then you saved me." Grace stirred between them, opening her sleepy eyes. "Are you and Christine kissing?" she asked matter-of-factly. Brent and Christine both blushed furiously. "We were just—" Brent began. "Good," Grace interrupted with a satisfied nod. "Families who love each other should kiss. It means they're happy." Christine laughed, the sound like music in the evening air. "You're a very wise little girl, Grace Thomas." "I know," Grace said seriously. "Daddy, can we go home now? I want to show Christine my butterfly collection, and I want to call Uncle Michael and tell him that you finally kissed her." "Grace!" Brent exclaimed, but he was laughing too. As they gathered their things and prepared to leave the museum, Grace slipped her small hand into Christine's. "Christine," she said quietly, "thank you for helping me find my voice today." "Thank you for sharing your beautiful voice with the world," Christine replied, squeezing Grace's hand gently. "You have so many wonderful things to say." Walking through the parking lot, Grace between them, their hands linked, they looked like what they were becoming, a family. Not a traditional family, perhaps, but a family built on love, understanding, and the miracle of second chances. "Christine," Brent said as he helped Grace into her car seat, "would you like to have dinner with us tomorrow night? At home, I make a mean spaghetti and meatballs." "I'd love to," Christine said, her smile radiant in the parking lot lights. "But only if you let me bring dessert." "Deal," Brent said, pulling her close for another quick kiss. "I love you, Christine." "I love you too," she whispered back. "Both of you." As they drove home through the quiet city streets, Grace chattering excitedly about their day, Brent caught Christine's eye in the rearview mirror. She was looking at them with such love, such contentment, that his heart felt like it might burst from happiness. For the first time since Sarah's death, Brent could envision a future filled with joy instead of just survival. A future where Grace had the mother she deserved, where he had the partner he'd thought he'd never find again, where love wasn't just a memory, but a living, breathing reality. The first kiss had been everything he'd dreamed of and more. But more importantly, it had been a promise of all the kisses to come, all the moments they would share, all the love they would build together. Their story was just beginning, and it was going to be beautiful. Chapter 5. Meeting the Family. 8 months into their relationship, Christine stood outside the university medical center, her palms sweating despite the cool autumn air, preparing to introduce the man she loved to the person who mattered most in her world. "You realize you're more nervous about this than you were about your nursing boards," Brent observed gently, taking her hand as they walked through the sliding glass doors. Grace skipped beside them, excited about meeting Uncle Michael, a title she'd bestowed upon him weeks before they'd even met. "Michael has been my responsibility since I was 19, Christine said, her voice tight with anxiety. "His opinion of you, it matters more than anyone else's ever could." "Even more than Grace's?" Brent asked with a slight smile. "Grace loved you from day one," Christine pointed out. "Michael is going to ask you about your intentions, your financial stability, your 5-year plan, and probably demand references from your previous relationships." "Sounds thorough," Brent said, squeezing her hand. "Good thing I came prepared with honest answers." They found Michael in the pediatric ward, where he was completing his final rotation before graduation. Christine's heart swelled with pride as she watched her baby brother, now 23 and tall as a tree, gently examining a little boy who couldn't have been more than 6. "Does this tickle, buddy?" Michael asked softly, his stethoscope moving carefully across the child's chest. "No. How about when I listen to your superhero heart? Wow, it sounds strong enough to power a whole city." The little boy giggled, and Christine felt tears prick her eyes. This was why she'd worked double shifts, why she'd sacrificed, why she'd never regretted a single moment of struggle. "Dr. Ringwall," the attending physician said as she approached, "your family is here to see you." Michael's head snapped up, and his face broke into the radiant smile that had charmed teachers, professors, and patients his entire life. "Christine!" He finished with his patient and hurried over, sweeping his sister into a bear hug that lifted her off her feet. "What are you doing here?" "I thought we were meeting for dinner tonight," he said, setting her down and immediately focusing his attention on Brent with sharp, assessing eyes. "We are," Christine said, suddenly feeling like she was 16 again and introducing her first boyfriend to her overprotective younger brother. "But I wanted you to meet some very special people first. Michael, this is Brent Thomas and his daughter Grace." Michael straightened to his full height, impressive at 6'2", and extended his hand to Brent with the formal courtesy that meant he was in full protective brother mode. "Mr. Thomas," he said politely, his handshake firm and measuring. "Please, call me Brent," Brent replied, meeting Michael's grip with equal strength. "Christine has told me so much about you. She's incredibly proud of what you've accomplished here. And you're the man who's been making my sister glow like sunshine for the past 8 months, Michael said, his tone carefully neutral, but his eyes conducting a thorough evaluation. Grace, who had been unusually quiet during this masculine display of territorial behavior, suddenly stepped forward with her characteristic directness. "Are you really going to be a doctor?" she asked Michael, her curiosity overcoming her shyness. Michael's stern expression immediately softened as he knelt to Grace's level. Something about children always brought out the gentle giant in him. "I am," he said seriously. "I'm studying to help children who are sick feel better. What do you think about that?" "I think that's the most important job in the world," Grace said solemnly. "Christine helps children too. She helped me when I was scared and sad, and she taught me that being different is just another way of being special." Michael glanced up at Christine, seeing the soft way she was looking at this earnest little girl, and something in his protective stance began to relax. "Christine has always been good at helping people," he said to Grace. "When I was little and got scared, she used to sit with me until the scary feelings went away." "She does that for me too," Grace exclaimed, her face lighting up with recognition. "And she sings the most beautiful songs, and she knows how to make pancakes shaped like butterflies." "Butterfly pancakes?" Michael raised an eyebrow, looking at his sister with amusement. "That's a new skill." Christine blushed. "Grace taught me that regular pancakes are too predictable. She prefers her breakfast to have personality." "Would you like me to show you around the hospital?" Michael asked Grace, his natural warmth finally overriding his protective instincts. "We have some pretty amazing things here." As Michael led them on an impromptu tour, Brent watched the interaction between the siblings with growing admiration. It was clear that Michael adored Christine, but it was equally clear that their relationship had evolved from the parent-child dynamic that necessity had created into something more balanced and mature. "This is where we help children who have trouble with their hearts," Michael explained to Grace as they passed the cardiac unit. "We have special machines that can look inside and see how everything is working." "Do you ever help children like me?" Grace asked quietly. "Children who are different?" Michael stopped walking and turned to face her completely. Grace, every child who comes here is different in some way. Some have hearts that beat differently, some have minds that work differently, some have bodies that move differently. But you know what they all have in common. What? Grace asked, hanging on his every word. They're all brave, they're all special, and they all deserve to be loved exactly as they are, Michael said firmly. Being different isn't something that needs to be fixed. It's something that makes the world more interesting. Brent felt his throat tighten with emotion. This young man understood Grace in a way that many adults, including some doctors, never had. "Can I see the X-ray machine?" Grace asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her usual anxiety about new places. "Of course," Michael said, leading them down the hall. "But first, I have a question for Mr. Thomas." Christine's stomach dropped. Here it came. "Brent," Michael said, stopping in front of a window overlooking the children's playroom, "can we talk privately for a minute?" "Michael," Christine started, but Brent squeezed her hand gently. "It's okay," he said. "He has every right to ask me whatever he wants to ask." As Michael led Brent to a quiet corner, Grace stayed with Christine, pressing her face to the window to watch the children playing below. "So," Michael said, crossing his arms and fixing Brent with the steady stare that had intimidated Christine's few previous dates, "what exactly are your intentions with my sister?" Brent appreciated the directness. "I love her," he said without hesitation. "I love her more than I thought it was possible to love someone again, and I want to spend the rest of my life making her as happy as she's made Grace and me." "That's a pretty speech," Michael said, unmoved. "But Christine's been hurt before, not romantically. She's never really had time for that. But she's sacrificed everything for me, put her own dreams on hold so many times I've lost count. She deserves someone who will put her first for once." "She will always come first," Brent said with absolute conviction. "Both she and Grace. They're my family now, Michael. They're my whole world." "You have money," Michael observed. "A lot of it, from what I understand. How do I know you're not just looking for a convenient caregiver for your daughter, someone to handle the difficult parts of raising a child with special needs?" Brent's jaw tightened, but he recognized the question came from love, not malice. "Your sister didn't just help with Grace's autism. She healed my broken heart. She made me remember what it felt like to be truly alive. Yes, she's wonderful with Grace, but I fell in love with Christine for her, not for what she could do for my daughter." "And when things get hard," Michael pressed, "when Grace has bad days, when Christine is exhausted from work, when the novelty wears off?" "Then we'll face it together," Brent said firmly, "like families do. Michael, I'm not going anywhere. I've already lost one person I loved. I know how precious and fragile happiness can be. I would never take Christine for granted." Michael studied him for a long moment, then his stern expression finally cracked into a smile. "Good answer. Because if you hurt her, medical school has taught me at least a dozen ways to make you very uncomfortable, and I have access to hospital-grade supplies." Brent laughed despite himself. "Fair enough. But you don't have to worry about that. Hurting Christine would be like hurting myself." "I can see that," Michael said, glancing over at Christine and Grace, who were now engaged in animated conversation about the children in the playroom. "You know, I've never seen her this happy. Not since before our parents died. She's always been the strong one, the caregiver, the one who holds everyone else together. But with you, she gets to be taken care of for once." "She deserves to be cherished," Brent said simply. "Yes, she does." Michael extended his hand again, this time with genuine warmth. "Welcome to the family, Brent. But I'm keeping my eye on you." When they rejoined the women, Grace was in the middle of an animated conversation with Christine about wanting to be a doctor when she grew up. Uncle Michael could teach me, Grace said excitedly. Couldn't you, Uncle Michael? Uncle Michael? Michael raised an eyebrow, but he was grinning. Christine says families choose each other, Grace explained with 8-year-old logic. And I choose you to be my uncle. Is that okay? Michael's eyes met Christine's across the hallway, and she saw the moment he fully accepted Brent and Grace into their small family circle. It's more than okay, he said, ruffling Grace's hair gently. But I should warn you, I give excellent birthday presents, and I tell the world's best bedtime stories. Really? Grace's eyes went wide with excitement. Really? Ask Christine. I once told her a story about a brave princess that lasted 3 whole nights. And every night I begged for more, Christine added, laughing at the memory. 3 days later, it was Brent's turn to be nervous as he prepared for Christine to meet Dr. Rebecca Sterling. Not just Grace's pediatrician, but his closest friend since Sarah's death, and the person whose opinion mattered most to him outside of Grace herself. They met at Rebecca's office after Grace's regular checkup. Grace had been chattering to Dr. Rebecca about Christine the entire appointment, telling her about butterfly pancakes, museum visits, and how Christine was the best, almost stepmom in the whole world. So this is the famous Christine, Rebecca said, shaking Christine's hand with a warm but assessing smile. Grace has talked about nothing else for the past 20 minutes. It's wonderful to meet you, Christine said sincerely. Grace speaks about you constantly too. She says you're the smartest doctor in the world and that you always have the best stickers. She's biased on both counts, Rebecca said with a laugh, but her eyes were studying Christine carefully. Grace, would you mind going to the playroom for a few minutes while I talk to the adults? Once Grace was settled with books and toys, Rebecca's expression grew serious. I've been Grace's doctor for 4 years, she began, and Brent's friend for even longer. I've watched this little girl struggle with anxiety, sensory issues, and social challenges. I've also watched her father pour his heart into helping her while dealing with his own grief. Christine's stomach clenched, but she met Rebecca's gaze steadily. In all that time, Rebecca continued, I have never, and I mean never, seen the kind of progress Grace has made in the past 8 months. She's more verbal, more confident, more socially engaged. Her anxiety levels have decreased dramatically, and she's developing coping strategies that are age-appropriate and effective. Christine felt her shoulders relax slightly. She's an extraordinary little girl. Anyone would... No, Rebecca interrupted firmly. Not anyone would. Do you know how many people see Grace's autism first and Grace second? How many well-meaning adults have tried to fix her instead of accepting her? But you see Grace, just Grace, and she knows it. Rebecca turned to Brent, who had been unusually quiet during this exchange. I've been worried about you for 4 years, watching you carry this burden alone, watching you blame yourself for things beyond your control. But today, you look like a man who's remembered how to hope. Christine gave me hope, Brent said simply, reaching for Christine's hand. She gave us both a future we didn't know was possible. Then I'm very happy for all of you, Rebecca said, her stern expression melting into genuine warmth. But Christine, I do have one question. Of course. Are you prepared for this? Really prepared? Grace will always have special needs. There will be difficult days, setbacks, moments when you question everything. Loving a child with autism isn't a part-time commitment. Are you ready for that reality? Christine didn't hesitate. Dr. Sterling, I've been a pediatric nurse for 6 years. I know that loving any child, but especially a child with special needs, isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Grace isn't a challenge to overcome or a problem to solve. She's a gift, and I'm honored to be part of her life. Rebecca smiled and stood, extending her hand again. Welcome to the family, Christine. Something tells me you're exactly what these two have been waiting for." As they left the medical building, Grace skipping between them in the autumn sunshine, Christine felt a profound sense of acceptance. She'd been welcomed by the two people who mattered most to Brent, his best friend and his daughter's doctor. "One more person you need to meet," Brent said as they reached the car, his voice growing slightly tense. "My mother." Christine's steps faltered. "Your mother? You've barely mentioned your mother." "Margaret and I have had a complicated relationship since Sarah died," Brent admitted, his jaw tightening. "She blamed me for not getting Sarah to doctors sooner, even though the cancer was aggressive and there was nothing anyone could have done. We've barely spoken in 2 years." "But she's Grace's grandmother," Christine said softly. "She is. And if we're going to be a real family, she needs to know about you, about us." Brent stopped walking and turned to face her, his dark eyes holding old pain and new hope. "Are you ready for that?" Christine looked at Grace, who was examining a perfectly shaped autumn leaf with scientific intensity, then at Brent, whose expression held vulnerability beneath his usual confidence. "I'm ready for anything," she said firmly, "as long as we face it together." And as they drove home through the busy city streets, all three of them knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would meet them as a family. A family that had chosen each other, fought for each other, and would love each other through whatever came next. Chapter 6. The Beautiful Truth. 10 months into their relationship, the photo album sat innocently on Grace's nightstand, its worn leather cover holding secrets that would change everything Christine thought she knew about destiny. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon in late fall, and Christine was helping Grace organize her room while Brent worked in his study. They'd been sorting through old books and toys when Grace pulled out the album with reverent care. "These are pictures of my first mommy," Grace said softly, settling beside Christine on the bed. "Daddy doesn't look at them much anymore because they make him sad happy." "Sad happy?" Christine asked gently, wrapping her arm around Grace. "Sad because she's gone, but happy because she was here," Grace explained with the wisdom that sometimes surprised adults. "Do you want to see her? She was very pretty, like you." Christine's heart clenched with a mixture of curiosity and guilt. Was it appropriate for her to look at these intimate family memories? "Are you sure it's okay? These are your special memories with your mommy." "She would want me to share them," Grace said confidently. "Daddy says she had the biggest heart in the world, and people with big hearts like to make new friends." As Grace opened the album, Christine was struck by the woman in the photographs. Sarah Thomas had been beautiful, with kind eyes and a radiant smile that reminded Christine of Grace's rare but brilliant grins. There were pictures of Sarah and Brent's wedding, photos of Sarah pregnant and glowing, and dozens of images of her with baby Grace. "She looks like she was wonderful," Christine said honestly, her voice thick with emotion. "She was," Grace agreed, turning the pages slowly. "She used to sing to me every night and make up stories about brave princesses who helped people feel better when they were scared." They continued through the album, and Christine found herself falling in love with the memory of a woman she'd never met. Sarah had clearly been devoted to her family, and every photo radiated love and joy. "Look, this is when Mommy helped sick children at the hospital," Grace said, turning to a section near the back of the album. Christine's world stopped. There, in a photograph dated 4 years ago, was Sarah Thomas, standing in the children's ward of Metropolitan Hospital, wearing a volunteer badge and surrounded by sick children. Christine's hand flew to her mouth as recognition crashed over her. "Grace," she whispered, her voice shaking, "can I see that picture more closely?" Grace handed her the album, and Christine stared at the photograph with growing amazement. It was definitely Sarah, and it was definitely the children's ward where Christine had done her student nursing rotation 5 years ago. But it was more than that. As the memory surfaced with crystal clarity, Christine remembered that day perfectly. She'd been overwhelmed, questioning whether she was strong enough for pediatric nursing, when a beautiful woman had approached her. "You look troubled," the woman had said gently. "Are you all right?" Christine had broken down, admitting her fears about not being good enough, about failing the children who needed her. The woman had listened with infinite patience, then spoken words that had changed Christine's life. "I can see it in your eyes," she'd said. "You have a gift for this. You're going to touch so many children's lives, help so many families. Don't give up on that calling. Someday you'll be exactly where you need to be, helping exactly who you need to help." "Oh my God," Christine breathed, tears streaming down her face. "Christine." "What's wrong?" Grace asked, alarmed by Christine's reaction. Christine looked at the beautiful little girl beside her, then back at the photograph, then at Grace again. The pieces of an impossible puzzle were falling into place. "Grace, sweetheart, I need to tell your daddy something very important. Will you come with me?" They found Brent in his study, surrounded by paperwork. He looked up with a smile that quickly faded when he saw Christine's tear-stained face. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, rising from his chair and moving toward them. "Brent, I need to show you something," Christine said, her voice trembling. "Grace was showing me pictures of Sarah, and I found something incredible." She opened the album to the hospital photograph and pointed to Sarah. "This picture was taken at Metropolitan Hospital, in the children's ward." "Yes," Brent said softly, sitting on the couch and pulling Grace onto his lap. "Sarah volunteered there every week for 2 years. She loved working with the sick children, said it gave her perspective on how precious our time with Grace was." "Brent," Christine said, her voice barely a whisper, "I was there that day. I met her." The silence in the room was deafening. Brent stared at Christine as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. "What do you mean you met her?" Christine sat down heavily, still clutching the album. "I was doing my pediatric nursing rotation at Metropolitan. It was my 4th week and I was struggling. I felt overwhelmed, inadequate. I was seriously considering switching to adult nursing because I didn't think I was cut out for working with children." Brent's eyes never left her face, Grace listening with rapt attention. "I was crying in the supply room when this beautiful woman found me. She talked to me for almost an hour, telling me that she could see I had a gift for working with children. She said, ... Christine's voice broke as she remembered the exact words. She said that someday I would be exactly where I needed to be, helping exactly who I needed to help. Grace, who had been listening with wide eyes, suddenly gasped, "Mommy sent you to us." "She inspired me to stay in pediatric nursing," Christine continued, tears flowing freely now. "After that conversation, I never doubted my calling again. I became a pediatric nurse because of what your wife said to me that day, Brent, and 4 years later, I met Grace in the diner." Brent was staring at her in complete shock, his face pale. "That's impossible. It's too much of a coincidence." "Is it?" Christine asked softly. "Or is it something else entirely?" Grace suddenly jumped up from her father's lap and ran to her bookshelf, pulling out a small journal. "Daddy, remember this? It's the diary you gave me to write down my thoughts about Mommy." She flipped through the pages until she found what she was looking for. "Here! I wrote this last month." She read aloud in her clear, sweet voice. "I think Mommy sent Christine to us from heaven. Christine has the same kind heart as Mommy, and she makes Daddy smile the way he used to smile in the pictures with Mommy." The 3 of them sat in stunned silence, the weight of this revelation settling over them like a warm blanket. "She knew," Brent said finally, his voice filled with wonder. Somehow, Sarah knew that you would be the one to help Grace, to help both of us. Christine pulled out her phone and scrolled through her photos until she found what she was looking for. "Brent, look at this." She showed him a picture of a journal entry from 5 years ago. "I wrote about meeting your wife. I called her an angel of a woman who reminded me why I wanted to be a nurse." Brent read the entry with shaking hands. The date was exactly 4 months before Sarah's cancer diagnosis. She was already sick when she talked to you, he realized. She must have known on some level that her time was limited, and she spent part of that precious time inspiring a young nursing student who would eventually help her daughter. "She guided me to you," Christine whispered. "All these years, I thought I chose pediatric nursing because of my own determination. But it was Sarah. She saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself." Grace climbed onto Christine's lap, wrapping her small arms around her neck. "I told you Mommy sent you to us," she said matter-of-factly. "Mommies in heaven watch over their families and make sure they're okay." Brent moved to sit beside them on the couch, pulling both his girls into his arms. "Do you know what this means?" he asked Christine softly. "What?" "It means we were always meant to be together. It means Sarah's love for Grace was so strong that it reached across time to bring you to us. It means this isn't just chance or coincidence, it's destiny." Christine looked around at this beautiful family that had become hers, at the photo album still open to Sarah's smiling face, at the journal entry that proved the connection she'd never known existed. "I feel like I should thank her," she said through her tears. "Like I should tell her that I'll take care of you both, that I'll love Grace the way she would have wanted her to be loved." "She knows," Grace said simply. "She's watching us right now, and she's happy." Brent took Christine's hands in his eyes serious and full of love. "Christine, I need you to understand something. This doesn't change how I feel about you. If anything, it makes me love you more. Knowing that Sarah somehow chose you for us, that she approved of you before we even met, it makes everything feel right." "I love you too," Christine replied, her voice thick with emotion. "And I love her, for raising such an incredible daughter and for trusting me with both your hearts." Grace looked between them with the solemn expression she wore when she had something important to say. "Does this mean Christine is my mommy now? Like, really and truly?" Brent and Christine exchanged glances, both knowing that this moment was changing everything. "What do you think?" Christine asked Grace gently. "Would you like me to be your mommy?" "Yes," Grace said immediately, "but not instead of my first mommy, as well as my first mommy. Is that okay?" "That's more than okay," Christine said, hugging Grace tightly. "That's perfect. Your first mommy will always be special, and I'll just be your second mommy who loves you just as much." "Can I call you Mom?" Grace asked shyly. Christine's heart swelled until she thought it might burst. "I would love that more than anything in the world." As they sat together, surrounded by the evidence of a love that transcended death, Christine felt a profound sense of peace. She wasn't replacing Sarah. She was continuing her legacy. She wasn't taking something that didn't belong to her. She was accepting a gift that had been meant for her all along. That evening, after Grace was asleep, Brent and Christine sat in the garden under the stars, the photo album between them. "I love you even more now," Brent said quietly, holding her close. "Knowing that Sarah approved of you, that she somehow chose you for us. It makes everything feel complete." "I love you too," Christine replied, her head resting on his shoulder. "And I love her for trusting me with the two most precious people in the world." Above them, the stars shone bright and clear, and somewhere in the vastness of the universe, Sarah Thomas smiled down at the family she had helped create through love, hope, and perfect timing. 10 months ago, Christine had thought she was just a waitress helping a struggling family. Now she knew the truth. She had been chosen, guided, and blessed by a love so powerful it could reach across life and death itself. And tomorrow, for the first time, Grace would wake up and call her mom. Chapter 7. Building Dreams Together. 12 months into their relationship, the morning sun streamed through the windows of Brent's study as Christine stared in disbelief at the documents spread across his mahogany desk. "You did what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Brent stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "I established a foundation, the Sarah and Grace Thomas Foundation for Special Needs Children, and I want you to be the director." Christine's legs gave out, and she sank into the leather chair. The papers outlined a comprehensive plan for helping families with special needs, children, funding for therapy, support groups, educational resources, and most importantly, expansion of the therapy program she'd been secretly funding herself. "Brent, this is incredible, but I can't accept this." "Why not?" he asked, moving to kneel beside her chair. "Christine, what you've been doing for those families, it's remarkable, but you shouldn't have to do it alone." Grace appeared in the doorway, having heard their voices. "What's wrong? Why does Mom look surprised?" Christine's heart still skipped every time Grace called her Mom, a title that had become natural over the past 2 months since their revelation about Sarah. "She's not upset, sweetheart," Brent said gently. "She's surprised about our special project." "The one where we help other kids like me?" Grace asked excitedly. "Daddy said we're going to make sure no family has to be scared because they can't afford help." Christine looked at this amazing father and daughter who somehow always saw straight to the heart of what mattered. "How did you find out?" she asked Brent quietly. "I've been in love with you for months, Christine. Did you think I wouldn't notice that you were living on practically nothing despite working 2 jobs? His voice grew soft. "I was worried about you when I found out what you were doing." He trailed off, his voice thick with emotion. "What Daddy found out," Grace chimed in, "is that you're like a secret superhero, but instead of fighting bad guys, you help families. That's when Daddy knew for sure that he wanted to marry you." "Grace!" Brent exclaimed, his cheeks flushing red. "What?" "It's true," Grace said matter-of-factly. "You told Uncle Michael that finding out about Mom's secret helper program made you want to love her forever and always." Christine looked between father and daughter, her heart racing. "You want to marry me?" "I dot." Brent started, then stopped. He took Christine's hands in his dark eyes serious. Yes, I want to marry you. I want to spend every day of the rest of my life loving you and Grace and building something beautiful together." "But that's not how you're supposed to ask," Grace interrupted seriously. "You're supposed to have flowers and music and get down on one knee like in the movies." Brent laughed, despite his nervousness. "You're absolutely right. The real proposal is going to be much more romantic." "Is that a promise?" Christine asked, hardly daring to breathe. "It's a preview," Brent said with a smile that made her heart skip. "The real proposal is going to be perfect." Grace clapped her hands excitedly. "Are you going to say yes when Daddy asks you properly?" Christine looked at this incredible little girl who had stolen her heart from the first day, then at the man who had shown her what real love looked like. "I think I might," she said softly, and Grace squealed with delight. Over the next few weeks, they worked together to establish the foundation. Christine was amazed by Brent's dedication to making it more than just a charitable tax write-off. He wanted to create real, lasting change for families like theirs. "I've been thinking," Christine said one evening as they sat in Brent's living room, Grace curled up between them reading a book about dolphins, "about moving in here officially." Brent's head snapped up from the foundation paperwork he'd been reviewing. Really? My lease is up next month, and honestly, I spend more time here than at my own apartment. But I want to make sure Grace is comfortable with it. Grace? Brent asked. How would you feel if Mom moved in with us permanently? Grace looked up from her book with the expression of someone who'd been asked if she wanted Christmas to come twice a year. You mean she'd be here every morning when I wake up? And every night for bedtime stories? And we could have pancake parties whenever we wanted? That's exactly what it means, Christine said. Yes! Grace shouted, then immediately covered her mouth. Sorry for yelling, but yes, please move in, Mom. This house needs your laugh to make it feel complete. The process of combining their lives was surprisingly smooth. Christine's possessions fit easily into the mansion, but more importantly, her presence transformed the cold, elegant space into a warm home. She filled vases with fresh flowers, added colorful throw pillows, and hung Grace's artwork throughout the house. Look at this place, Michael said during one of his regular dinner visits. It actually feels lived in now. Mom makes everything better, Grace said seriously, passing him the potatoes. She taught me how to cook pancakes, and Daddy how to braid hair properly, and all of us how to have dance parties in the kitchen. Dance parties? Michael raised an eyebrow at Brent. Brent laughed, looking more relaxed than Michael had ever seen him. Grace insisted we needed to celebrate finishing our first week running the foundation together. Christine put on music, and the next thing I knew, we were all dancing around the island while dinner cooked. It was the best day ever, Grace added, until the next day, which was also the best day ever. Every day with Mom is the best day ever. But not everything was perfect. As their relationship deepened, Christine struggled with accepting the vast differences in their financial situations. She insisted on contributing to household expenses, despite Brent's protests. I need to feel like an equal partner, she explained one evening as they discussed their future. Not someone you're taking care of. You are an equal partner, Brent insisted. Christine, what you bring to this family isn't measured in dollars. You've given Grace confidence, given me hope, given us both love. That's worth more than anything money can buy. I know that, Christine said softly, but I also need to know that I can stand on my own 2 feet, that if something happened to you, I could take care of Grace. It was their first real disagreement, and it led to their first real fight. Nothing dramatic, but a tense conversation about independence versus partnership that lasted well into the night. I'm not trying to control you, Brent said finally, exhaustion in his voice. I'm trying to love you. And part of loving someone is wanting to make their life easier. And part of loving someone is respecting their need to contribute, Christine replied. Brent, I've been taking care of myself and Michael for 9 years. I need to feel useful, not just cherished. They resolved it by agreeing that Christine would handle all household expenses while Brent covered Grace's needs and the mortgage. It wasn't perfect, but it was compromise, the foundation of any real relationship. Later that month, Christine got unexpected news that would test their partnership in a different way. Dr. Martinez called today, she told Brent, as they prepared dinner together. They want to offer me the head of pediatric nursing position at Children's Hospital. Brent nearly dropped the pan he was holding. Christine, that's incredible. It's what you've always wanted. It is, she agreed. But it would mean giving up the day-to-day foundation work. I'd have to choose between my dream job and our dream project. What if you didn't have to choose? Brent asked thoughtfully. What if we restructured the foundation? Hired an operations manager to handle the administrative work while you focus on programs and policies. You could work at the hospital part-time and run the foundation part-time. Christine stared at him. You'd do that? You'd completely restructure everything just so I could have both? Christine, Brent said, cupping her face in his hands, I'd restructure the entire world if it meant making you happy. Besides, What better way to help families than to have someone who understands them from every angle? 3 weeks later, Christine stood in her new office at the Foundation headquarters, looking out at the bustling therapy center they'd created. Children with autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and dozens of other conditions were receiving the care they needed, regardless of their family's ability to pay. "Ms. Christine," a little boy called out as he passed her office with his mother, "look what I drew." Christine knelt down to admire his artwork, a picture of his family holding hands under a rainbow. "It's beautiful, Tommy. Your family looks so happy." "They are happy," Tommy's mother said softly. "For the first time since his diagnosis, we're all happy. Thank you for making this possible." As the day wound down, Christine found herself in the sensory room they'd designed specifically for children like Grace. The lighting was soft, the colors were calming, and there were quiet spaces for children who became overwhelmed. "Hard to believe it's real, isn't it?" Brent's voice came from the doorway. Christine turned to find him watching her with love and pride. "It's more than real," she said, walking into his arms. "It's perfect. We're helping so many families, Brent. Children who might have gone without therapy are getting help. Parents who felt hopeless now have support. And it's all because of you," Brent said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Because you saw what needed to be done and did it, even when it meant sacrificing your own comfort." "We did it," Christine corrected. "All of us. You, me, Grace, even Sarah in her way." "Speaking of Grace," Brent said with a mysterious smile, "she has something she wants to ask you when we get home." "What kind of something?" "The kind that requires a yes or no answer and might involve happy tears." Christine's heart began to race. "Brent Thomas, are you about to propose to me through your 8-year-old daughter?" "Would I do something like that?" Brent asked innocently. "Yes," Christine said, laughing. "You absolutely would." As they drove home together, Christine felt overwhelmed by the perfection of her life. She had meaningful work, a beautiful home, and most importantly, she had love. The kind of love that built foundations and fulfilled dreams. Tonight, she had a feeling, would be the night that made everything official. Tonight, they would take the next step toward forever. Chapter 8. The Miracle Discovery. 14 months into their relationship, the manila folder in Brent's hands contained information that would either confirm what his heart already knew or prove that miracles truly existed in the modern world. He sat in his car outside the Sunshine Therapy Center, watching through the window as Christine worked with a group of children. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, completely absorbed in helping a little boy with cerebral palsy stack colorful blocks. Her patience was infinite, her smile radiant, and Brent felt his heart swell with love and admiration. What he'd discovered a week ago had left him speechless. It had started innocently enough. While planning the perfect proposal, Brent had wanted to surprise Christine by inviting families from her secret therapy program to a special celebration. He'd hired a private investigator to track down the families she'd helped, expecting to find a handful of grateful parents. Instead, he'd uncovered something extraordinary. "Mr. Thomas," the investigator's voice had been filled with disbelief. "You need to see this. What Ms. Ringwald has been doing. It's not just a few families. She's been funding therapy for 58 children over the past 3 years. 58. Brent had stared at the report in shock. "That's impossible. She doesn't have that kind of money." "She does now. She's been using every penny of her savings, plus she took out loans against her future earnings. She's been living on less than $50 a week for groceries. Mr. Thomas, she's been slowly bankrupting herself to help these families." The folder contained documentation of Christine's financial sacrifices, Bank statements showing transfers to the therapy center, receipts for children's medical equipment purchased with her credit cards, letters from grateful parents who had no idea their anonymous benefactor was a waitress working double shifts to afford their children's care. Now, as Brent watched Christine celebrate the little boy's successful block tower, he understood the magnitude of what she'd done. This woman, his woman, had been an angel in disguise, quietly saving dozens of families while working herself to exhaustion. "Daddy!" Grace's voice called from the therapy center entrance. "Come see what I learned." Brent tucked the folder under his arm and walked inside, his heart full of nervous anticipation. Tonight was the night. He had the ring, he had the plan, and after what he'd discovered, he had absolute certainty that Christine Ringwall was the most extraordinary woman who had ever lived. "Look!" Grace demonstrated a new breathing technique she'd learned to manage her anxiety. "Mum taught me that when I feel scared, I can breathe like a flower, smell the petals, blow out the candle." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Brent said, but his eyes were on Christine, who was finishing her session with the other children. As the families began to leave, several parents approached Christine with tearful gratitude. "Ms. Christine, I don't know how to thank you," said Maria Santos, whose daughter had severe autism. Sophia spoke her first sentence last week during therapy. "We never could have afforded this without the scholarship program." Christine hugged Maria warmly. "Sophia is incredible. You should be so proud of her progress." "The scholarship program?" Brent asked quietly once the families had gone. Christine's cheeks flushed pink. "The center offers need-based assistance for families who can't afford full fees. It's not a big deal." "Christine," Brent said gently, "we need to talk." Something in his tone made her look up sharply. "Is something wrong? You sound serious." "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right, but there's something I need to ask you." He took her hand, leading her to a quiet corner while Grace played nearby. "The scholarship program here, how long has it been running?" "About 3 years, Christine said carefully. "Why? And how is it funded?" Christine's eyes widened as she realized where this conversation was heading. "Brent, please don't—" 58 children, Christine." His voice was filled with awe and love. "You've been helping 58 families for 3 years. You've spent your entire savings, taken out loans, lived on practically nothing, all to make sure children got the therapy they needed." Tears spilled down Christine's cheeks. "How did you find out?" "I wanted to surprise you by inviting some of the families you'd helped to our engagement party. I hired someone to find them, and instead I found—" He opened the folder, showing her the documentation. "I found proof that you're the most selfless, incredible person I've ever known." "I couldn't let them suffer," Christine whispered. "These children, their families, they needed help, and the system failed them. What was I supposed to do? Just walk away?" "Most people would have," Brent said softly. "Most people would have said it wasn't their responsibility. But not you. You saw children in need, and you moved heaven and earth to help them." Grace approached them quietly, sensing the emotional weight of the conversation. "Are you crying happy tears or sad tears?" she asked Christine. "Happy tears, sweetheart," Christine said, wiping her eyes. "Very happy tears." "Good," Grace said, then turned to her father with surprising seriousness. "Daddy, are you going to ask Mom to marry us now?" Brent laughed, his nervousness evaporating in the face of his daughter's directness. "Actually, yes, right here, right now." He dropped to one knee in the middle of the therapy center, pulling out a ring box that held the most beautiful diamond Christine had ever seen. "Christine Ringwall," he began, his voice strong and clear. 14 months ago, you walked into our lives and changed everything. You saved Grace. You saved me. And today, I discovered that you've been saving dozens of other families too. You're not just the woman I love. You're a living miracle." Christine's hands flew to her mouth as Grace clapped excitedly beside them. "I don't just want to marry you because I love you, though I do, more than life itself. I want to marry you because you make me want to be better, because you show me every day what real love looks like, because when I imagine the future, the only one that matters has you in it." Around them, the therapy center staff had quietly gathered, drawn by Grace's excited whispers. "Christine," Brent continued, "will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your incredible heart?" "Yes," Christine sobbed, holding out her shaking hand. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." As Brent slipped the ring onto her finger, the small crowd erupted in applause. Grace threw herself into both their arms, and the three of them held each other tight. "I have one more surprise," Brent said when the cheering died down. "Dr. Martinez called yesterday. I may have made a substantial donation to Children's Hospital with the condition that they create a new position, Director of Family Support Services. It's yours if you want it. You'd oversee the hospital's charity care program and work directly with families who need financial assistance for their children's medical care." Christine stared at him in amazement. "You created a job for me?" "I created a job that lets you do what you're already doing, but with the resources and support you deserve," Brent corrected. "You'll never have to choose between helping families and paying your own bills again. And the foundation will continue to thrive under your guidance." "Christine, what you've built here, this program, these relationships with families, it's going to be the model for everything we do." That evening, as they sat at dinner celebrating their engagement, Grace raised her small glass of apple juice for a toast. "To Mom," she said solemnly, "for being the best secret superhero ever, and for saying yes to marrying us." "To Christine," Brent agreed, his eyes never leaving his fiancée's face, "for teaching us that love isn't just a feeling, it's an action, and for showing us that sometimes the most incredible miracles come disguised as ordinary people doing extraordinary things." Christine looked around the table at her new family, at the ring sparkling on her finger, at the life they were building together. "To family," she said softly, "and to second chances, and to love that's strong enough to change the world." As they clinked glasses, all three of them knew that this was just the beginning. They had a wedding to plan, a foundation to run, and dozens of families counting on them. But most importantly, they had each other. And with love like theirs, anything was possible. Chapter 9. Preparing for Forever. 16 months into their relationship, Christine stood in her wedding dress for the final fitting, barely able to believe that in just 2 weeks she would become Mrs. Brent Thomas. "You look like a real princess," Grace breathed from her seat by the mirror, where she was carefully organizing the pearls and crystals that had fallen from Christine's dress during alterations. The dress was simple but elegant, ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves and a flowing train that made Christine feel like she was floating. But the most beautiful part wasn't the dress itself. It was the glow of happiness that seemed to radiate from her skin. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" asked Margaret Thomas, Brent's mother, who had become one of Christine's greatest allies over the past 6 months. The relationship with Margaret had been rocky at first. When Brent had finally introduced them 8 months ago, Margaret had been cold and suspicious, clearly protective of her son and granddaughter. But Grace had won her over within minutes, chattering about how Christine helped with her nightmares and taught her to braid friendship bracelets. "She makes Daddy laugh again, Grandma," Grace had said with her characteristic honesty. "He was sad for so long after Mommy went to heaven, but Christine made the sad go away." Now Margaret was one of Christine's fiercest supporters, helping with wedding preparations and openly declaring that Christine was exactly what their family needed. "I feel nervous and excited and grateful all at the same time," Christine admitted, smoothing the silk over her still flat stomach. At 6 weeks pregnant, she wasn't showing yet, but the secret knowledge filled her with such joy she thought she might burst. She and Brent had decided to announce the pregnancy at the wedding reception as a surprise for their guests. Only the three of them, Michael, Dr. Rebecca, and Margaret, knew about the baby. "That's exactly how a bride should feel," Margaret said warmly. "Brent called this morning. He's beside himself with excitement. I haven't heard him this happy since before Sarah got sick." "He's not nervous about the wedding?" Christine asked, adjusting her veil. "Nervous about marrying you?" "Never," Grace said confidently. "He's nervous about his speech. He's been practicing it every night, and it makes him cry every time." Christine laughed, imagining Brent pacing around his study, rehearsing his vows. They'd decided to write their own, keeping them secret from each other until the ceremony. "How are things at the foundation?" Margaret asked as the seamstress made final adjustments. "Better than we ever dreamed," Christine replied. "We've helped over 400 families in the past year. The new therapy center opens next month, and we have a waiting list of volunteers who want to help." "And the hospital position?" "Perfect. Dr. Martinez has been wonderful about letting me split my time between the hospital and the foundation. I'm working with families during the week and running foundation programs on weekends." What Christine didn't mention was how exhausted she'd been lately. Between the new job, the foundation work, wedding planning, and early pregnancy, she'd been running on adrenaline and love. But the joy of it all made every tired moment worthwhile. "All right, you're perfect," announced the seamstress. "This dress was made for you." As Christine changed back into regular clothes, her phone buzzed with a text from Brent. "Can't wait to marry you in 2 weeks. You're my everything. P.S. Grace has been practicing her flower girl walk for an hour. She's taking this very seriously." Christine smiled, typing back, "Can't wait to be your wife. Tell our flower girl she's going to be perfect." That evening, the rehearsal dinner was held at Brent's house, transformed into a garden paradise with fairy lights and flowers everywhere. The guest list was small, just family and close friends, but the love in the air was overwhelming. Michael gave a speech that brought everyone to tears, talking about how Christine had sacrificed everything to raise him and how seeing her this happy was the greatest gift he could ever receive. "Christine taught me that family isn't just about blood," he said, raising his glass. "It's about showing up for each other day after day with love and patience and faith. Brent, Grace, you're getting the most incredible woman in the world. Take care of her the way she's taken care of everyone else." Dr. Rebecca spoke next, sharing the story of Grace's transformation from a withdrawn, anxious child to the confident, happy girl she was today. "Love is the best medicine," she concluded, "and this family has more love than any prescription could provide." When it was Brent's turn to speak, he stood slowly, his eyes finding Christine's across the table. 16 months ago, I thought my story was over," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought I'd had my chance at love, at family, at happiness. I was just going through the motions, trying to be the father Grace deserved while feeling completely lost." He paused, looking at Grace, who was listening with rapt attention. "Then Christine walked into our lives and changed everything. She didn't just help Grace, she saved us both. She showed me that hearts can heal, that love can happen twice, that families can grow in the most beautiful and unexpected ways." Christine was crying openly now, not caring about her makeup. "In 2 weeks, I marry my best friend, my partner, the love of my life. But more than that, I marry the woman who gave me hope again. Christine, you are my miracle." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter, tears, and anticipation. Grace fell asleep in Christine's lap during dessert, and as Brent carried their daughter to bed, Christine felt overwhelmed by the perfection of her life. "Nervous about the wedding?" Michael asked, sitting beside her on the garden swing. "Not about marrying Brent," Christine said immediately. "About everything else, the dress, the flowers, Whether I'll cry through my vows?" "You'll cry," Michael said with certainty, "and it'll be beautiful. Christine, I need to tell you something." She looked at him curiously. "I'm proud of you, not just for the foundation or the hospital job, or even for finding this incredible love. I'm proud of you for never giving up on happiness. After Mum and Dad died, you could have become bitter or closed off. Instead, you chose to love harder, to help more people, to keep your heart open even when it hurt." "I had to," Christine said softly. "I had you to think about. You were my reason to keep going. And now—" Christine looked toward the house where Brent was tucking Grace into bed, probably reading her 3 stories and singing her favorite lullaby. "Now I have all of you, and a baby on the way who's going to be surrounded by so much love they won't know what to do with it all." "You're really going to tell everyone at the reception?" During the toasts, Brent can barely contain his excitement. "I caught him looking at baby clothes online yesterday." Michael laughed. "He's going to be an amazing father to this baby, and Grace is going to be the best big sister in the world." Later that night, as tradition dictated, Christine slept at Margaret's house while Brent stayed home with Grace. As she lay in the guest room, looking out at the stars, she thought about Sarah. "Thank you," she whispered to the night sky. "Thank you for Brent, for Grace, for leading me to them. I promise I'll love them with everything I have." A week before the wedding, they faced their first real crisis as an engaged couple. Christine had been feeling unwell for several days, more than just morning sickness, and when she collapsed at the foundation, Brent rushed her to the hospital. "It's just dehydration and exhaustion," Dr. Rebecca assured them after running tests. "But you need to slow down, Christine. The baby is fine, but you're pushing yourself too hard." "I can't slow down," Christine protested weakly from her hospital bed. "The wedding is next week, the foundation gala is next month, and I have 3 families starting therapy programs." "The foundation will run without you for a few days," Brent said firmly, taking her hand. "And the wedding will be perfect, whether you're stressed or relaxed. What matters is that you're healthy and happy." "But no buts," Brent interrupted. "Christine, you spent your entire adult life taking care of everyone else. Now let us take care of you." It was Grace who solved the problem, as she often did with her simple clarity. "Mom," she said seriously from her chair beside the hospital bed, "remember what you told me when I was scared about starting school? You said that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let other people help you." Christine looked at this wise little girl, at Brent's concerned face, at the family that loved her enough to worry. "You're right," she said finally. "Both of you. I'll take the next few days off." "Promise?" Grace asked. "Promise." The next morning dawned clear and beautiful, with just enough breeze to make the garden flowers dance. Christine woke with a smile on her face and butterflies in her stomach. In 1 week she would be married. In 1 week she would officially become Grace's mother. In 1 week she would announce that their family was growing. In 1 week all her dreams would come true. As Margaret brought her breakfast in bed and Grace knocked excitedly on the door, asking if it was time to get ready yet, Christine felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. She had started this journey as a lonely woman working 2 jobs to support her brother. Now she was about to become part of something beautiful and lasting, a family built on love, strengthened by challenges, and blessed beyond measure. In 7 days, she would be Mrs. Christine Thomas. She could hardly wait. Chapter 10. Forever begins today. 18 months after that first magical day at Harmony Diner, Christine woke to sunlight streaming through lace curtains and the sound of Grace giggling in the hallway. "Today's the day!" Grace burst through the bedroom door, already dressed in her flower girl dress, a miniature version of Christine's gown in soft lavender. "Today you become my real mommy forever and always." Christine's heart swelled as she pulled Grace into bed beside her. "I've felt like your real mommy for months now, sweetheart." "I know," Grace said seriously, "but today it's official. Today everyone will know that we chose each other." Margaret appeared in the doorway with a breakfast tray, her eyes misty with emotion. "My granddaughter has been awake since 5 a.m., planning every detail of today. She's more excited than the bride." "She's perfect," Christine said, kissing the top of Grace's head. "We're all perfect." As the morning progressed, the house filled with the controlled chaos of wedding preparations. The hairstylist arrived first, transforming Christine's hair into an elegant updo adorned with the pearls that had belonged to Brent's grandmother. The makeup artist followed, enhancing Christine's natural glow while Grace watched in fascination. "You look like a fairy tale princess," Grace declared as Christine's transformation neared completion. "And you look like the most beautiful flower girl in the world," Christine replied, adjusting Grace's flower crown. By noon, guests had begun arriving at the mansion. The garden had been transformed into a fairy tale setting with white roses, fairy lights strung between trees, and an altar made of birch branches and flowing fabric. The aisle was lined with petals that Grace had carefully scattered that morning. In Brent's study, he paced nervously while Michael adjusted his tie for the third time. "You're going to wear a hole in that carpet," Michael observed with amusement. "I can't believe this is happening," Brent said, running his hand through his hair. "I can't believe she said yes. I can't believe she's having my baby. I can't believe I get to love her for the rest of my life." "Believe it," Michael said firmly. "You deserve this happiness, Brent. You both do." Dr. Rebecca knocked on the door, poking her head inside. "The bride is ready, are you?" Brent straightened his shoulders, took a deep breath, and nodded. "I've been ready since the day I met her." The ceremony began at 2 o'clock sharp. As the string quartet played Pachelbel's canon, the guests rose to watch Grace walk down the aisle. She moved with careful precision, her basket of rose petals creating a perfect path. When she reached the altar, she turned to the crowd and announced, "Here comes the most beautiful bride in the world." The guests laughed softly, but all sound died away when Christine appeared at the end of the aisle. She was breathtaking. The ivory silk dress flowed around her like liquid moonlight, and her veil caught the afternoon breeze. But it was her smile, radiant with pure joy, that took everyone's breath away. Brent felt tears stream down his face as he watched the woman he loved walk toward him. This was really happening. After 4 years of darkness, he was standing in sunshine again. "You look beautiful," he whispered as Michael placed her hand in Brent's. "So do you," she whispered back, her own eyes glistening with tears. Pastor William smiled at the couple before him. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of two hearts that have already proven their love through action, sacrifice, and devotion to family." The ceremony was intimate and personal. When it came time for vows, Brent went first, his voice strong despite his emotions. "Christine, 18 months ago, I was a broken man raising a beautiful daughter who deserved better than I could give her. Then you walked into our lives and everything changed. You didn't just help Grace, you saved us both." He paused, looking at Grace, who was beaming with pride. "You taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up day after day with patience and kindness and faith. You loved Grace exactly as she was, and you loved me despite all my fears and failures." His voice broke slightly. "You are my miracle, my second chance, my everything. I promise to love you with the same devotion you've shown us. I promise to support your dreams, to be your partner in all things, and to spend every day trying to be worthy of your incredible heart." Christine wiped away her tears before beginning her own vows. "Brent, when I first saw you in that diner, I saw a father who loved his daughter more than life itself. I saw strength and gentleness and a heart that was healing, but not broken. I fell in love with you in that moment, though I didn't understand it then." She looked at Grace, who was practically vibrating with excitement. "Grace, my beautiful girl, you taught me that families aren't just born, they're chosen. You chose me that first day, and I choose you today and always. You are my daughter in every way that matters." Turning back to Brent, she continued, "I promise to love you both with everything I have. I promise to be Grace's mother and your wife with equal devotion. I promise to build dreams with you, to face challenges together, and to never forget how blessed we are to have found each other." "Do you have the rings?" Pastor Williams asked. Grace stepped forward proudly, carrying the ring pillow with the solemnity of someone entrusted with precious treasure. As they exchanged rings, Brent spoke the words that would bind them forever. "With this ring, I thee wed. My heart is yours now and always." Christine's voice was steady and clear. "With this ring, I thee wed. My love is yours for all time. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," Pastor Williams declared. "Brent, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was tender and passionate, full of promise and joy. The guests erupted in applause, but the new family barely heard them. They were lost in their own perfect moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Pastor Williams announced, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Brent Thomas and their daughter Grace." The reception was magical. They danced their first dance to "At Last" by Etta James, with Grace joining them halfway through the song. They cut the cake with Grace's help, laughed at Michael's embarrassing stories about Christine's childhood, and celebrated until the stars came out. As the evening wound down, Brent stood to make an announcement. "Christine and I have one more piece of news to share," he said, his arm around his wife's waist. "Our family is growing. We're expecting a baby in early spring." The crowd erupted in cheers and congratulations. Grace jumped up and down, shouting, "I'm going to be the best big sister ever." Margaret dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief. "Sarah would be so happy," she whispered to Dr. Rebecca, who nodded in agreement. Later, as the last guests departed and Grace fell asleep in Margaret's arms, Brent carried Christine over the threshold of their home. "Mrs. Thomas," he said, setting her down gently in their bedroom, "how does it feel to be married?" "Perfect," Christine said, stepping into his arms. "Everything feels perfect." He cupped her face in his hands, looking into her eyes with wonder. "I love you so much. I love you. I love Grace. I love the baby we're going to have. I love the life we're building together." "I love you too," she whispered. "All of you. All of this. Every beautiful moment." As they held each other close, surrounded by candlelight and the scent of roses from their garden wedding, they knew that this was just the beginning. They had challenges ahead. A baby to raise, a foundation to grow, a family to nurture. But they also had something unbreakable. Love that had been tested by loss and proven stronger than fear. "Thank you," Christine whispered against Brent's lips. "For what?" "For letting me love you. For loving me back. For Grace. For the baby. For this beautiful life." "Thank you," Brent replied, "for saving us. For showing us that happily ever after isn't a fairy tale. It's a choice we make every day." Outside their window, the garden where they'd just been married glowed softly in the moonlight. And somewhere in the vast universe, Sarah Thomas smiled down at the family she had helped create, knowing that love truly was eternal, and that some stories never really end. They just grow more beautiful with each passing day. 18 months ago, Christine had been a lonely waitress and Brent a grieving widower. Tonight, they were husband and wife, parents to Grace, and expecting their first child together. This was their forever, and it was perfect. Their love story, born from a simple act of kindness in a diner, had become a beautiful forever that would last through eternity.